Welcome into the I-80 Club National Fun League Week 18. For Mike Schaefer, there was nothing fun about the NFL in Week 18, though I guess you did pick the Commanders in your survivor pool, and they did deliver. So congratulations to you, Mike Schaefer, on the early part of yesterday.
Yeah, I think I would have traded the survivor pool win for the Vikings to win on Sunday night, but I don't leave empty-handed, I suppose. What a weird Week 18 for like everyone else, and then now it's weird for me because it feels like the Vikings got eliminated, and they actually go play a playoff game now on Monday. They play a playoff game, and the team probably is at the lowest confidence-wise that it would be with the performance that they had on Sunday. And yet you could also look at it, and if they have a better first half, they're in a significantly better spot in that game. I don't know. There's a lot to work out. We'll see. But the Vikings had an opportunity to kind of announce that, hey, we're a good football team. We can do this. And everyone other than really the defense collectively failed on Sunday night. So hats off to the Lions. They're the superior team. I make the jokes all I want, but the Lions are the better football team.
Corey, who is a Lions fan, commenting in the I-80 Club Discord server, says, beautiful morning. It is actually nice outside today, Schaef. I mean, it's cold, but I think we're going to see the sun for the first time in a few days, so that maybe that'll lift up your spirits when you go outside with the negative 5-degree wind chill.
Yeah, but why am I going outside? Like, what are
Yeah. To get the mail, maybe?
Being outdoors.
Got to grab a package,
The mail could be gathered tomorrow. I actually don't know when the last time we got the mail was.
Oh, wow.
It's one of those where it's never more than a couple days, but like we both just sort of randomly check intermittently without asking the other person, because rarely is there anything worth seeing in the mail.
Yeah.
The credit card offers and the insurance companies can wait. So
many of those. You said it, Schaef. It was a weird Week 18. And before we get into your game in particular, I did want to mention that because it was one that very much felt like a preseason week in a lot of ways, right? Where you're seeing backups. Like the thing that kind of surprised me was that you were seeing backups in games in which like a win in theory helps the team. Like, I guess I was a little surprised that the Rams just kind of punted on yesterday, knowing that they would, if they lost, they would play the loser of your game. Though they beat the Vikings on that Thursday night game. They played close to the Lions, so maybe they just didn't care. But we saw a lot of those. Washington, they were playing for seeding, as was the Packers at the same time. And the Packers, it seemed like they were trying harder, quote unquote, whereas Washington, they had a backup quarterback in for the entire second half. And so by the time we finally got to your game at night, it was like I almost had to like catch my bearings on, okay, this is going to be a game that matters. We're going to see the teams approach it that way, because throughout much of Sunday, I was watching football that didn't feel that way at all. And it felt like a preseason, week 3, week 4 preseason type situation.
Yeah, and then you get to the big game in the evening, and both teams kind of play terrible in the first half, and then Jahmyr Gibbs basically just kind of took over in the second half. Like, it was Jared Goff had a couple nice plays in there, but it was largely just Jahmyr Gibbs was the best player on the field. And the Vikings defense, just for as good as it played in the first half, could not be expected to continue to turn back the Lions time and time again. And yet you're still, if Andrew Van Ginkel holds on to that screen pass that he jumped and scores a touchdown on that, then it's like 17-15 pending the 2-point conversion that they would have failed on. There's so much that's in that game that was right there for the taking. The Sunday night game, we'll talk about that more in depth, I'm sure. But do you think any of this results, do you think they changed the schedule at all? Are you going to have less division? Because everyone played the division game in week 17 or week 18. Do you think you've tried to change that? Is there any change that you can really make? Because it just sort of how things broke out, that you had teams that had clinched everything in advance, that there just wasn't as much at stake. I mean, your Commanders or Falcons win away from that Rams Seahawks game having meant for who's getting into the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's some of it is just pure circumstance. So I don't know if you can really make changes, but as someone who watched more of the slate than I was able to, I probably only had an hour and a half on in the early afternoon, and then watched a little of the late games and then certainly the Sunday night game. But, is there any change that you would actually be able to make here, Josh?
Yeah, John and I talked about that a week ago today when, the schedule was fully formed and we kind of knew what it was at stake. And it was like, wow, this is rough. And I've been someone that always liked when they made the move at some point within the last decade and a half-ish to have every game the last week as a divisional matchup. Like, I was someone who appreciated that. Like, I know we've talked before about the famous Vikings-Cardinals game with that stupid old rule, right, where if you were pushed out of bounds, well, you could have had 2 feet in bounds and the Vikings lose. That game happened to the Cardinals. Obviously, the Vikings and the Cardinals were never division foes, at least in our lifetime, right? Like, they were always in different divisions, and yet that was how the season ended, that Week 17 game, a couple of decades ago. I don't know. Like, the immediate answer would be like, yeah, maybe you got to go away from having so many division games. On the other hand, is it just like, are we overreacting to one season? And this was an odd season, man. We had Kugler on our show on Friday, and we talked about the top of the league and the bottom of the league. And it's pretty wild when you look at records and the worst teams in the league this year, like a 6th or 7th, overall pick in the draft. Most years would be like 1, 2, or 3. And it just shows how big of a discrepancy there is. So maybe this was just an odd season where you have X amount of 14-win teams. You have a 15-win or a couple 15-win teams. Maybe this is just a strange year, but it did. I don't know, man. I love Week 18 normally with the usual melancholy of a regular season ending. This one was quite the dud. And I guess to go back to what I said a few minutes ago about the Rams, are we just learning that teams don't maybe care about seeding as much as like we do as fans? Like, I am very much focused on, man, I would rather play this team or this team. But I guess if you're making the playoffs, are you really going to you probably think you can beat anybody? Matchups be damned.
Yeah, there's a part of me that just wonders if you're the Rams, like you played the Lions close in the last 12 months.
Yeah,
you've beaten the Vikings. Maybe you're looking at it and you're like, all right, well, if we're going to have to play a shootout style game, we'd rather do it against quarterbacks that are less mobile than a Jaden Daniels or a Jalen Hurts on that side of the draw. Maybe you thought the Eagles were the best team and you're just trying to avoid having to go to Philadelphia because it's the furthest body clock, and you'd rather be a dome team and play inside domes, whether that's the Lions or the Vikings. So that was the only thought that maybe I had with the Rams, that they just looked at it like, hey, we got to beat these teams either way, and we'd rather, stay indoors if we can kind of do that versus potentially go outside. Now, obviously, if the Commanders or the Packers win and the Rams win, then it's all for naught. But it does make me wonder if there's something about the matchup that they preferred, be it the Lions or the Vikings. I mean, I know this. I didn't want to play the Rams in large part because Minnesota's already done this. They've already lost a game to the Lions and then played the Rams on the road immediately, after that. Now, a little bit longer of a break. We'll see what the Vikings learned, if anything, from that game. We'll see how they bounce back. But that becomes a matchup that I anticipate is going to be a very trendy. I would imagine the Vikings are slight favorites, if favored at all. I don't know. I haven't looked at the lines.
Yeah, now you bring that up. I realize I haven't checked the lines either. Yeah, I'll look at it right now.
I mean, I see that being kind of a trendy pick this week with the Rams, just with the Vikings and the way they looked in the last game of the season.
Yeah, quick line look. You're right. Vikings, short favorite, -2.5 on the road. I think that you are 100% correct that the Rams will become the trendy pick there. Other games, Commanders are 3.5-point dogs on the road at the Bucks. The Eagles, -4.5 versus the Packers. The Bills, -8.5 versus the Broncos, which is not the biggest spread of round one. That would be Ravens, -9.5 versus the Steelers. And then the first game of the playoffs, Chargers road favorites -2.5 at the Texans. So a week of home favorites is bookended by road favorites with the Chargers over the Texans and your Vikings.
Seeds, basically.
The 5 seeds, yeah, and a couple of 4 seeds. Well, certainly the Texans, who I think have kind of had a stink bomb to finish up the season. Chuck writes in on the Discord, Schaef. He says injury avoidance greater than seeding. If it's 5 to 7 seeding, not getting hurt way better. If you can lock that one, you go all out as we saw last night. And yeah, maybe that is the lesson where it's just like if we're not playing for the 1 seed in the bye, we are very happy to rest people and go into round 1 and not have to worry about putting any more miles on the odometer. And so we saw that with the Rams. Obviously, we were going to see that with the Eagles. They had well locked up the number 2. The Commanders, again, I was a little surprised by that, but it's not even like Daniels was playing that great either. He had a really rough first half, and the Cowboys were defending him pretty well, and so you get him just a little bit more rest before his first ever playoff game. Meanwhile, though, the Chargers did. They had their starters in the whole time. The Steelers had their starters in the whole time in that Saturday game versus Cincinnati. And I guess even Baltimore had their starters in for a long time because people are wondering late in that game, like, why in the world is Derrick Henry still out on the field? And then he gets a long touchdown and they win that one going away. So I think it seems like as I kind of take a step back and look at the teams that did and didn't, maybe some of the younger coaches like a McVay, he seems like someone who is always happy to punt on the last week of the season if they're in. He did this last year too.
I think
I was like, wow, that's interesting.
They're an old team. They always come across as an old team because you have Stafford, you have Kupp, so you try to keep those guys healthy. I think Kyron Williams have been pretty banged up towards the end of the year, so you can get him off his feet and less traffic there. Puka Nacua has been hurt half of the season, so now again as a fan of the team now that it's playing the Rams, I'm not excited. I don't think they're going to be rusty because they took this week off.
Yeah.
That is not a super exciting matchup to me. I liked it more when at one point it looked like the Falcons were somehow going to be the 4th seed.
Yeah. Also, you said it earlier, and I hadn't put 2 and 2 together. The last time that you played them, it followed the loss to the Lions. Mm-hmm. So, that was a couple months ago now. One more before we get to your game last night. Matt says, hey, how about the Bears winning at Lambeau yesterday? They even survived their regular Nebraska-ing moment with the announcer Jinx fumble. Did you know at all what happened at the end of that game? Oh, my God.
I don't know anything that happened. So there's I had stuff going on in the middle of the games yesterday.
Shout out to your child.
Yeah, baby crawling champion Hudson. We had a big race in the middle of these Sunday afternoon games. But being the pathetic father that I was when this was not going on and we're just sitting in the arena, I'm looking at the scores because I want to see if the Commanders, and I had no idea the backups were even in. And there's this stretch where they go ahead at the same time that it appears that the Panthers were headed for overtime. So it's the Falcons have absolutely no reason to try. And the Panthers are basically looking to win a game here to go into the season or the off season with some momentum. So I was, excited about that. And then you're just looking around at the rest of the scores and it's like, oh, the Patriots won. Oh, the Bears won? And I saw that they were up, but it was like a punt return. And then Swift had a touchdown, but it was 14-10. So it's okay, the Packers will take care of this or the Bears will do Bears stuff. So walk me through the big finish here because I got texts about it. I never saw it and I haven't gone back and looked at it.
Yeah, okay, so it's 14-13 at the half. Jordan Love was banged up. He's going to be fine. He's going to play on Sunday afternoon versus the Eagles, but he's not out there, so Malik Willis is out there. And so they just kind of trade some turnovers. They trade some punts. The Packers get stopped on downs at one point in the second half. Then the Bears, they have a nice touchdown drive. They score. They go up 21-13, so they're up by 8. And at this point, again, they trade some punts. The Packers get the ball, and they score a touchdown with about 4.5 minutes left in the game. They go for 2. They do not get the 2. So then, at this point, the Bears just got to run out the clock. The Packers are losing timeouts. And it's all right, even if they don't run out the clock, they're suddenly at midfield. So if the Packers get the ball back, it's going to be on the other side of the 2-minute warning, and they're going to have one timeout or maybe no timeouts. So they do this little swing pass. Well, first of all, they have a first down play where they gain yards. I think they gain 4 or 5. Then there's a hold, and so it pushes them back, and so it's 1st and 20. So they do this little swing pass to Moore, and he catches it, and he stops, and he moves forward, and then the ball just gets poked free. And so the Packers have it. They don't do very many plays. They do a few plays, then they kick a field goal. 55-yarder shape. It looked like it was going left, and then suddenly it curved back in, made it over the post. So it's like, wow, the Bears are going to lose in horrific fashion yet again. And because at the same time, the Cowboys are still up on Washington, it's like, holy crap, this is going to cause these two teams to flip. The Bears then have an incredible drive as they go right down the field. It begins with a horse collar tackle sack on Caleb Williams that gives them 15 yards. They pick up some more. They kick a 51-yarder to win at the same time, pretty much, that Washington scores. So in the end, it didn't even matter because Washington won, and so they were going to lock up the 6. But it was like a weird, bad, good game all at once. And shout out to the Bears. I've said the stat all year long. They were one play away from being 5-2. Then they lost, 10 games in a row. And now here they are. It's nice to go into the offseason with a win. I sadly cannot say the same thing. But good on you, Chicago. That was a fun game.
Yeah, now just retain the coach. Don't consider getting better in the offseason. Just retain the coach, run it back. It'll be great.
Hey, speaking of, did you see Doug Peterson got fired? But they're keeping Balky for some reason. The Jaguars are.
I don't know.
Yeah, don't understand it.
It's gone so well. It's gone so well for him.
Bring back Urban.
Will this be his third coach?
Mm-hmm. This will be the third coach that Trevor Lawrence has had in 5 years, 5, 6 years.
How often does a GM get 3 coaches?
Yeah, seriously. I don't understand. It's a bad organization. All right, the people are here to hear you talk about the Vikings. They don't care about They want to hear Mike Schaefer give his takes. This is a game, man, that like the final score, I do think is very deceiving. And this is not, I'm not the Vikings homer in the conversation. But as you mentioned a few minutes ago.
You want to be, I can play the other side of it if you'd like.
But there is the drop Van Ginkel play. That was in the fourth quarter, right? That was a fourth quarter play, and it makes it 17-15.
It's a one-score game at that point,
Yeah, at the very least, it's 17-15. At the very most, it's 17-17. This is one where if you were still holding on to stock that Sam Darnold is not the guy and that this year has been fool's gold, this would be the game that you would point to. It was his, I don't know, I can't say definitively that it was his worst game of the year. That Jaguars game that he had earlier.
No, the Jaguars game was worse.
But this was rough, man. He was just sailing passes. Everybody in the first part of it, given the stakes, the Lions played an NFC Championship last year, so they played in a game with bigger stakes. But otherwise, this was probably like the second biggest game that the Lions have played in. This is the biggest game that the Vikings have played in over the last couple of years. Just seemed like everybody was tight.
We're in a literal playoff game, but yes.
I guess that's true.
The stakes are huge in this game.
Yeah. And Sunday Night Football, big moment. And it just seemed like, and maybe that is, distilling the conversation or the game down to just like, a radio talking point. But it just did seem like everybody was tight. And I thought that showed itself most with Darnold. They moved the ball so well, and then they get in the red zone, and then he would overthrow guys, or Justin Jefferson would get a couple hands on the ball, and he wouldn't be able to bring it in. Their defense was showing up time after time after time. But, they said it. Collinsworth, was flabbergasted. He's like, this is not going to hold up. At some point, the dam is going to break. And it did. It just took until the fourth quarter. What are the takeaways? You said it at the start of the pod. You feel like your season is over, but a week from tonight, they're going to play in another football game. So it is certainly not over. So you obviously hope that the players and the coaches don't have the same kind of mindset that the fans do today.
Yeah, it's frustrating because it's just one of those where the narratives are going to be all about Sam Darnold unable to show up in the moment. He played poorly. He really did. Yeah. He held on to the ball too long. He also was not helped out by the interior of Minnesota's offensive line, which got absolutely exposed by every middle blitz possible, every stunt. He was under pressure a ton. Detroit blitzed. I think I saw they had a 60% blitz rate on Sunday, by far their highest of the season. They basically went after Sam Darnold, and they went after this Vikings offense. And Minnesota, as you said, and I agree, and you could see it early. And it wasn't just Sam Darnold. It was Justin Jefferson. It was Will Reichard. I thought TJ Hawkinson played scared on a couple of those high passes because he had his knee blown out by this team last year. So, it was everybody involved over there. Kevin O'Connell had a rough game. The defense was fantastic for basically 2.5, 3 quarters. You really couldn't ask for a better, a better run there. But you got to finish in the red zone. I mean, you have all those opportunities. You got to get a couple touchdowns there. I mean, it's an entirely different game if you're able to do that. They're going to have to flush the fact that Sam Darnold struggled in this. You could point to it being on the road, but if this goes how you want, you're in that environment at some point again, right?
You're probably in this exact environment in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming neither the Commanders or the Packers win, which there's obviously that. Like, you can talk yourself into this being, oh man, they're gonna have to play them again in 2 weeks. They're coming off a rest, blah blah blah. Yeah. Who knows how the rest of the playoffs are gonna go, and then they have to obviously beat the Rams, which is really concerning because if you think about how the Rams are built, they're not all that different than the Lions. They have an offense that can get up and down the field and score. They have a passing attack that's difficult. They have a quarterback that Brian Flores struggled against because you can't just, he wasn't able to get pressure with 4. They didn't want to blitz him because Matthew Stafford would eat their lunch on the blitz. They got beat because their corners aren't good enough in that game. And then they didn't finish with touchdowns. They had field goals. And so that's going to be the recipe again. And Minnesota is going to have to prove that they're the 14 side of the ledger and not the one terrible loss to the Lions and then 2 losses in the regular season where 1, they could have beat the Lions, and then 2, the Rams game that got away from them. So I'm mostly worried about, do they double down on being tight next Monday? Is it like are they able to go on the road, go play somewhere where it's not going to be as big of a home field advantage? I mean, I think that is one of the things that's helpful here. I mean, you were in the literal lion's den, if you will, if you were the Vikings yesterday, and the noise of that place, I can't remember. I think it was a touchdown that put them up 17-9. That, like, on the 4th and 2, Minnesota sends the blitz, and kind of the perfect play call from Ben Johnson there with the staggered halfback out of the backfield against a 0 blitz. Nobody's there to pick him up. That was kind of like, oh man, if Minnesota has anything in them, and then they have the opportunity to go and score, and you kick the field goal, and he misses, and so if I was the things I'm most concerned about, the offensive line pressure internally, really difficult. Now you're going to go play Jared Verse and all these good Rams pass rushers. Sam Darnold, and then the kicker. I mean, like, I just don't know what the headspace of either Sam Darnold or the kicker will be. I mean, it's the first time that Darnold hasn't been able to just kind of shake it off and then go forward. At least against the Jaguars, like, he was able to, after those interceptions, they're still moving the ball. They really struggled to move the ball. They had a short field all the time, and they didn't take advantage of it. Like, they had a couple big plays. When Cam Akers didn't score on that run, I sent a text like, this is the worst case scenario for Minnesota, because now they have to score a touchdown. Yep. They won't commit to just trying to power run the ball into the end zone, and they can't block well enough. Like, your short field like that, you're gonna blitz, and he just wasn't seeing guys. I mean, he missed wide open wide receivers that he had to get the ball out to, and he couldn't do it. So and there's no break. I mean, you have to pick up this version of your team, put it back together, and go to LA, right? and try to win a game. But that's where you have to, if you're a Vikings fan, you have to believe that Kevin O'Connell can do that. If you believe, again, that this is a team that won 14 games and is one of the 5 best teams in the NFL, which I don't know. They didn't look like it, but you played a Lions team that looked really, really good. They're really got after you defensively. I think their offense was kind of a surprise, but some of that is the Vikings did a nice job on Jared Goff, and he got rattled a little bit. I mean, they should have had a safety before that interception. That should have been a safety. I mean, that wasn't a real target. It wasn't a real throw. But, the Lions were able to overcome, and Jahmyr Gibbs was a huge part of that. I didn't believe that pick when they made it a couple years ago, and I thought David Montgomery was going to be a huge loss for them. But Gibbs was able to take over that game in a way that Minnesota just couldn't stop him.
Yeah, so are you surprised at your confidence being shaken like it is. Like I think
I never had on the bingo card the disaster game that was last night. I mean, I was confident Minnesota would be able to score on Detroit's defense because the previous 4 weeks they're the worst defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, like
they showed the numbers at one point that the amount of points that they had given up on average in the last 4 games is pretty wild.
Yeah. And so that's why, I mean, I put a lot of it on the feet of Kevin O'Connell, the offensive line, Sam Darnold, some combination of that. I mean, so they didn't get it done. I mean, Justin Jefferson drops a touchdown that you never see that. And then he had a terrible game. I mean, he really did. And it looked like they were in his head as well. They never were able to get Addison the ball, which is just shocking to me. Again, and it starts with Sam Darnold. He was flustered early and it just never settled down. When he came out in his first throw of the second half was basically on a missed, I don't know who missed a route, if it was Addison ran the wrong route or Darnold made the wrong throw. And Dan Campbell's mad because the Lions kind of probably should have gotten intentional grounding because there was no receiver over there, and it's just, at that point, I didn't think they were going to win the game because you kind of needed them to come out and have a drive. It's 10-6. Brett Kane and I, former Omaha radio host Brett Kane, we're texting, and it's basically like some combination of you can't believe you're only down 4 points of how bad you played, and you can't believe that you only have 6 points because of how bad the Lions played, and it doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay, if this opening drive they come out and they go score a touchdown, you have the Akers run, and he didn't finish it. Like I said, I mean, it was hard to believe after that. And right now, there's too much that just doesn't look good going into the playoffs. Now, we'll see. It takes one game to flip it around. They somehow 100%. Go into SoFi and they have a great game and you win 37-20, and then people are going to be like, okay, hard to beat a team 3 times, So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm going to be extremely nervous going into Monday night because I don't feel great about that. And I think the defense could have done a lot more to give you a chance to beat a team like Detroit in their own house. And you just couldn't score touchdowns.
Yeah, I think you lay out a lot of good stuff there. And I think to our early discussion on today's pod about what you do in week 18 in terms of sitting versus not sitting. And your performance does show the benefit of being able to take it a little bit easier. Now, look, if you win, or if you're a Lions fan today, you're like, thank God we played for the 1 seed and we got it because now we get a week off and we have, home field. We will never play a road game again this season. But the quick turnaround of everything that was at stake, you right now 24 hours ago versus you 24 hours later. I mean, it's night and day in the path that you have, how you're feeling about the team. I'm surprised that it got to the point where you do feel this concern, but I understand it because I also watch the football game. And so it just that they have to turn around now and play again in a week. And then they would have to go on the road, most likely for 3 games just to get to the Super Bowl, for 2 games just to get to the NFC Championship. They'll probably have to run into the Lions again, in round 2 at the very least. It shows how tough it was. And again, that they had opportunities. Riss wasn't really watching a ton of the game last night. And so towards the end, when you missed the field goal, she's like, you can't settle for field goals against this team. And I was like, that's the interesting thing, though. They haven't. They went for it on 4th down. They were just unable to get it. It was this odd combination of they kicked field goals I thought they made the right decision when they kicked field goals, but then they would go for it. And I also thought they made the right decision when they went for it, because you just can't expect the Lions to score as few points as they did. And eventually the dam did break. It was a very perplexing game overall, just in terms of the flow of it, how it went, how nervous or tight the team seemed to be. And you get into the 4th quarter, and it's like, wow, this is still a really close game. And then everything just changes over the course of 2 drives. And suddenly it's like, all right, well, I guess we can turn this one off.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. I just sat through it. And then it's also just there's a part of me that feels like the Lions wanted to come up short at the very end of that game just to make the Vikings kneel it out. You just wave the white flag in the Lions building. That was part of the master plan all along. You're Dan Campbell at the end of that game. You're going into your locker room. You're like, we just made those guys kneel the ball on a loss in our building.
Is that what happened? They ended by taking knees. I was reading
the Vikings took a knee. Yeah,
I was reading Little Fires Everywhere. I missed the. I did not watch the very end of the game.
Josh Peterson.
Yep.
Gives up on football, last regular season game, can't even make it to the end. He's got to get to his books.
Yep. Hey, shout out to Mike Schaefer. What a great recommendation. I'm
a
enjoying
great
it
book.
very much. Yeah, I'm enjoying it
It'd
a lot.
Still be a great book if you had watched the sad ending.
I didn't need to watch the sad ending. Matt says, so many people in here jumping off the Darnold bandwagon really shocked me. Are you? I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked at all. People have been
wanting to jump off the Darnold bandwagon.
They don't.
Now there's going to be a lot of victory laps this week, and yada yada yada. Yeah, he looked terrible. Like it was a bad time for him to look terrible. But it's still the same guy that got you there. It's still the same damn Arnold, damn Sarnold. Is that what I was going to say?
I like that damn Sarnold.
Damn Sarnold that got you there. He's still the same guy that had the 377 the week before, or had the pass to Justin Jefferson against the Seahawks. But he didn't show up when you needed him most in that game, and he wasn't alone. Like that's the thing. Like it was a bad Sam Darnold performance. It was a bad Justin Jefferson performance. It was a bad Will Reichard performance. I mean, the kickoff out of bounds right before halftime.
Yes,
it was a bad.
Essentially, the field goal that you made was rendered moot by that one little mistake.
And then it was a bad Kevin O'Connell. It was a bad offensive line performance. So it takes everybody to look that bad. But you could tell early in the game that you weren't getting a crisp version of him, that he looked rattled, that he, you just kept waiting for the Seeing Ghost clips to play at some point from the NBC production. Which, hey, if we can do anything here, can we get a distinguishing point on whether Mike Tirico wants to be the head official or the play-by-play guy?
Dude, that guy loves rules more than anyone I've ever met.
Good Lord.
Mike Tirico, Michael Severe handshake meme.
Yeah, I know. At some point, it's just like, hey, they're not calling it how you want them to call it. Like this isn't,
the delay of game soapbox that he got onto multiple times.
God.
Like I've long agreed with him. I have an easy fix, and that's just like light up the goalposts, and instead of it reaching zero, because I'm gonna get nerdy for 5 seconds. When the clock hits zero on the play clock, it is technically at 0.9, 0.8, 0.7 for a full second, right? So just make the play clock like you do the shot clock in basketball, where you do have tenths of a second. Light up something when it hits zero so everyone can see it at the same time, just like they do with the shot clock. And there you go. That's my fix for the NFL. But yeah, he was on one about that.
If he wants to be the head official, he can apply for that job.
He could. It probably pays a little bit less than the voice of the NFL.
He got the safety thing wrong though. I mean, he was telling us who was available as eligible receivers, and then you have
and then McCauley's
great. Yeah, McCauley's like, yeah, that's absolutely a safety.
Mm-hmm.
There's no intent for either of those. He wasn't clearly trying to throw to 89. Mm-hmm. It's fine. Minnesota lost. Detroit is better. I didn't think they were better. That's honestly the biggest takeaway that I have from this. They showed up and they played a better version of their style. They got the fourth downs that they needed. They had a couple early in the game where it was like Minnesota had a chance to get them off the field and couldn't quite do it. I still think they're gettable. Like I don't think that they're unstoppable by any means, but I certainly won't have confidence that if these teams match up again, that the Vikings are just going to flip the script on them because I just don't know. I don't know if Minnesota thinks they can beat them. That's kind of the sad thing about last night is they kind of had their lunch money taken and were given a swirly and stuffed in a locker and whatever else you want to call it. It's kind of tough to watch your team have that happen. And then, are they able to come back from it in a week to play a meaningful game for the right to potentially play the same exact game again in 2 weeks? But that's why they're professional athletes. That's why it's sports.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens.
That's why you and I are just doing a podcast. I realized, Schaef, that we got the schedule yesterday. We never confirmed any time for future episodes. So do we want to do a little preview of round one? Would you rather save that and do that before round one? What do you want to do?
Let's do a preview now.
Okay.
Because I don't know if we'll get to some of those games. And then I don't know if we just want to stick on the Monday schedule. Because obviously
do we do a Monday, Tuesday next week? Do we recap and then recap? Or do we just do a Tuesday show next week just to recap the Vikings and also be able to look backwards?
I think both days are fairly open for me. So
all right. So people might get 2 NFL pods.
We'll have to decide on that, but I think we're going to preview anything we're going to want to do of our time remaining here.
All right, let's do that then. So we mentioned the matchups earlier, and we only have about 10 minutes left, so we're going to have to fly through these.
There's not that much that's exciting about any of these.
Yeah, okay. Let's just go with that question. What is standing out to you a week out from these games? Again, Chargers, Texans, Steelers, Ravens on Saturday, Broncos, Bills, Packers, Eagles, Commanders, Bucks on Sunday, and then obviously your game versus the Rams on Monday. We had a possibility within the last couple of weeks of, I think, more intriguing matchups, though you and I talked about it last week, man. Round two is always awesome, but I mean, I am kind of in like, all right, let's fast forward through some of these games, especially on the AFC side, so we can get to round two, because I think you have the blockbuster Bills, Ravens, and dude, I think it's going to be Chargers, Chiefs. On that side, my early lean would be Vikings at Lions again, and Bucks at Eagles. That would be my early lean. Here's my takeaway. I'm very concerned that this is setting up for a nice run by Philadelphia to get into the conference championship game without sweating. And if they get there, it wouldn't shock me if the Vikings pulled off the upset and suddenly they're hosting a home game. So I am very nervous as a Cowboys fan / Eagles hater. What are the early Mike Schaefer takeaways?
The early takeaways is that Bucks-Commanders game features two teams that just looked atrocious to kind of finish the season. I mean, the Commanders didn't look great against the Falcons. And then I didn't get to watch any of the second half against the Cowboys, so I don't know, what's going on there. You have a Bucks team that struggled to overcome Spencer Rattler and was likely, done if playing. Like if the Bucks had to play the Panthers, and I know they just played them the week before and crushed them. Like it's a weird deal. Like Tampa sometimes just shows up and you're like, oh man, the version of this team is just bad, and so. It'll be interesting because their defense is a little banged up. Like if the Commanders can take advantage of that, I think that's a potential upset. I don't know what to do about the Packers because they lost the last two games to finish the year. The Eagles have looked great when they've wanted to look great. I don't know if they have a great answer for Saquon Barkley.
And Jordan Love's banged up again. Like he's going to play, but that dude has been hurt since week one, since the Brazil game versus this team.
It feels like the only way the Packers end up pulling that upset off is if Jalen Hurts has a really rusty, bad return. You have like a couple turnovers, or I think the Packers defense can do some stuff.
Yeah.
But I just
seems like his concussion might be worse than we expected, because there was like talk about that yesterday. Like, how healthy is he going to be even for the playoff game? And D'Lo says it. Will Hurts be ready? Like, I'm stunned that this has lingered on. And like, maybe I shouldn't be. It's a concussion. Like, it is a brain injury. But I mean, I don't know, man. We watch football all the time, and guys come back from it, every week. And so it is a lot worse than it looked live when it happened versus Washington a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and then Rams Vikings we've kind of touched on a couple times here. I don't feel great. Like I think the Vikings will sneak through, but I don't feel good about it. It's not a matchup I'm excited about. And we'll see how Sam Darnold bounces back. That'll be the big conversation one way or the other. Yep. And then on the AFC side, none of them excite me. Not a single one of those games is exciting, which is unfortunate. I think that I'm with you. I think it'll be Chargers, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens in your AFC Final Four. If I had to make an NFC guess, it would be Eagles. It would be Eagles, Vikings, Commanders, Lions, maybe.
So you think the Commanders are going to?
I think I would take the Commanders, and I've been on the Bucks bandwagon, but man, they are banged up and they do not look very good. And I don't know. I like the Commanders. Kind of feel like they have at least one sort of frisky performance in them, where Jaden Daniels is running all over the place, and they can't cover Terry McLaurin and. All of that, or they could also come out and play absolutely terrible, and the Bucks dominate them. The Bucks killed them in the first game of the season. I think they're both really different teams at this point. But yeah, I think that's what I would have it at. But I don't have that much confidence in the NFC side of it, where I think they're closer to two of those games are toss-ups with Bucks, Commanders, Rams, Vikings, and then the Eagles, Packers is like a 60-40 or 65-35 for me. Whereas the AFC, it's like I'd be pretty shocked if the Bills lost.
Oh, it'd be a stunner.
And it's the Broncos have a defense. I just don't think that Bo Nix can put up enough points. I just don't. That's what it comes down. And I don't believe in the Steelers at all. I haven't really believed in them at all this year. I don't think Russell Wilson averaging 4.8 yards a pass is going to beat anybody in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Russell Wilson beat anybody in the playoffs.
No.
Other than if the Vikings lose the results, I'd be most annoyed by it. I don't want to see the Broncos again. And it's not that they're not a solid team. It's just, do you really want to watch Bo Nix in a game that matters right now? I don't think you do.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch Ravens Broncos because I don't think there's a chance in hell that the Broncos would win that game.
And hey, I would also say this: if you are someone who wants the Chiefs knocked out, and you don't want them to go on a run, the thing that you need the Bills and the Ravens to win because obviously.
Oh yeah, that's right. I keep doing the college football playoff thing. The reseeding would change.
The reseeding because if the Broncos won, they would play the Chiefs. And I know that they just whooped them, but that didn't matter, and they played them closer than the other time. That doesn't matter. I think Chargers give the best chance to beat them in round 2, and then obviously I think Bills or Ravens would be the best chance to beat them in the conference championship game. So that's what you should be rooting for. Man, you're giving me pause about thinking that the Bucs are going to go through. Maybe you're right. Maybe it will be Washington because I think
it's coin flip. I really do.
Yeah.
If you had to pick a team right now that doesn't have a bye, so neither the Lions or the Chiefs, the team without a bye that has the best chance to make the Super Bowl is?
Best chance, period. Man, I think I'd go with the Eagles just because of their run game and Saquon and, they are good. They are.
Is it the Eagles because it's the team you least want to see make the Super Bowl?
Probably. I mean,
it's sort of a defensive mechanism.
I think it might be. I mean, the other part is just picking one of the AFC teams, the Bills or the Ravens, is just, okay, it's going to be hard because most likely if I pick the Bills, they got to go through Baltimore and Kansas City. And so that's tough. Whereas the Eagles don't have anything near equivalent to that. And I mean, the Lions are tough, but otherwise they wouldn't have to go through another team. And so I think that is, but you're right. It probably is the defense mechanism. Do you have it? Would you go with one of the AFC teams?
It would probably be the Ravens for me, just because right now, I think if you're the Bills, the Ravens are probably even scarier matchup than the Chiefs are because you're going to have to stop both Lamar and Derrick Henry. And your defense in the playoffs, in particular, when a team has just gone power running game at you, I think about what Joe Burrow and the Chiefs did in the snow in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Baltimore would be remotely concerned about going on the road and having to win that game.
No, they definitely
doesn't have the same baggage as going into Arrowhead, Will.
No, you're right. Yeah. Those teams don't have the baggage against each other. They do against the Chiefs.
I would probably say the Ravens is the non-number 1 seed that I think has the best chance of winning or getting to the Super Bowl.
Getting to the Super Bowl.
And then it's probably the Eagles because it's the
NFC.
Likely path.
Yeah.
Then the Bills and then maybe the Vikings. Probably the Vikings. I don't see. I was just on here talking about how I felt like the NFC was sort of wide open, and now just because of these Week 18 performances from Minnesota and Tampa and Washington and Green Bay and the Rams didn't try. Suddenly it's are any of these 5 teams even capable of winning 3 games in a row and getting to the Super Bowl? I don't know. I don't believe this, and so. It's really flipped hard for me. I'm being very reactionary to it, and I know that. Yeah. But man, a lot happened and nothing happened at the same time in Week 18, and it feels like there's 5 teams that I think have a chance of winning the Super Bowl. But really, it also just feels like we're destined for Chiefs, Eagles, Chiefs, Lions. Yeah. So, what are you gonna do?
So that's where we sit as the regular season comes to an end. Sorry, no Cowboys talk. There was someone who asked me who are the Cowboys going to draft. I don't know. That was Alex.
What pick are they?
Over. They are in the 12 to 13 range. I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks
real quickly.
Yeah.
Real quickly.
Yeah.
Just so we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
It's hard. It is hard for teams to tank in the NFL. So when you're listening to your podcast and your reactions and people are complaining that this team won and that team won, grown men getting paychecks to go play a violent sport are not going to just help out draft status. of your favorite.
Because they might not even be on the team the next year. They don't care.
Right. Why would they care?
Yeah, why would they care? All right, so we'll be back in a week, and maybe we'll be back in a week and also a day. We'll lock down the schedule for National Fun League for next week. We appreciate everyone for joining us. Coming up this week on the I-80 Club, we have 2 After Nebraska Ball pods, one tomorrow, one on Sunday, and then the usual stuff, brunch show, Wednesday night, Saturday morning coffee. You can subscribe if you want to hang out with the commenters inside of our Discord, because we did see some YouTube comments today. You can subscribe today at patreon.com/I-80 Club. Plus, you get all the pods ad-free if you decide to do that. We would love to have you. Schaef, what can the people come to expect as the offseason continues to roll on for Husker football? And basketball is a wagon right now.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Basketball plays on Tuesday against Iowa, and it feels like the perfect recipe for they beat Purdue last year, and then I think they had to go on the road to play Iowa and lost that game. And so,
yes,
we'll see if the same thing kind of comes to fruition after UCLA. Entirely different styles, so we'll see how they adjust to that as well. But we'll have those conversations on the Husker 24/7 Hoopscast. It should be a return to regular schedule for Husker 24/7 after some sort of holiday bowl game nonsense where everything has just been weird for 2 straight weeks. But now we have a normal week coming up. So I appreciate that. And you can catch everything we do over at Husker 24/7. The podcasts, the writing content, all of that and more.
All righty. So there you go. Subscribe today. Also, again, once you get past the free trial, you get a subscription to Paramount Plus, which is very, very nice. You can watch Taylor Sheridan shows if that is something that you very much enjoy. Schaef, we will talk to you next week. Good luck. I hope that the vibes are better a week from now than they are right now for you after the tough Vikings loss.
Yeah, I got a full week of listening to basically all of the Sam Darnold talk, and then they get to turn around and play a game. So I have to decide if I want to go full bore into coverage or if it's just like don't listen to anything and then turn the game on Monday night. Like it's going to be a tough decision. I don't know which way I'll go.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Again, after Nebraska ball tomorrow night, following Nebraska and Iowa, turn on the notifications, subscribe, turn on the notifications here on the YouTube page, and you will get access to that immediately when Jack, Caleb, and Bigelow get going. For Mike Schaefer, I'm Josh Peterson. Thanks for joining us today on National Fun League.